and the things that I learned inside of there. Questions that anybody would have. I don't know what you would like to know about what took place or what they were like. You had a number of questions. Now, Bob, I saw on your list that you said, did you get this out of books? Prior to this time, I hadn't read any books, and John can attest to this because John said to me, oh, it says stuff like that in the Bhagavad Gita. And I didn't know what the Bhagavad Gita was. John brought that along. Or Patanjali Sutras, or I knew there was a book because I was told of it called the Egyptian Book of the Dead by them. And so after this all had happened, about a year down the road, we went out and bought some Egyptian Books of the Dead and started reading through the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It tells a little bit of the story about what it, or this thing of Summum is about and what it's like. But it doesn't go into the great details. And then Ron Zephyr from California would always come up with the books with all the quotes in them of the things that we were teaching. So I didn't have a chance to read, except for I had read the Bible, I had read the Book of Mormon, and the Doctrine and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Price, which I guess you could say were the only religious books that I'd ever read prior to that experience. Questions from anybody? Nobody has any questions, huh?
Did you have a difficulty in your relationship with the Summa Individuals? Did you feel that they were forcing you against your will?
Yes, I did. After the first encounter, like I've told you, John, before, and many of the other people around here, I went home because I was just staying with Chris once in a while. I went home to my apartment at Woodlake Village, and I would stay there. I found it very difficult to go to work. And I would stay and I'd sort of hide under my covers, and that lasted for about 6 months. And this whole period of time, I was going through an inner struggle with myself that I thought I was going crazy, that I had hallucinated all this stuff. And every time I would get to the point of, well, I'm not having anything to do with this. I don't want anything to do with religion or philosophies or going out and telling people about the story. They'll think I'm crazy. And I started telling a few people about it, and they really did. John showed up just a month or so right after that, didn't you, John?
It was a few months after your initial experience.
Right. And I had written a little article on meditation, just sort of put it in this little flyer thing, and John read it, and he asked me about that, and so I told John about it, and then I told John how I didn't enjoy this, but this is sort of what I was stuck with, and I couldn't get out of doing this because every time I tried to, these guys would get me again. And it would be not necessarily at the same place, but they would come into my presence and say, this is what you've got to do. This is what this is all about. You've got to go out and tell people about these different concepts and then go build a pyramid and make this nectar. And I said, yeah, sure. And it all happened. I didn't say that in those words to the extent that when you're in their presence, it isn't like a conversation. It's sort of one way. It's sort of they do the communicating because they know what you're thinking and what's going on in your head, and they just give you the instructions, and there's no room for argument in their presence. The argument comes when they're away and you're alone and you conjure up all these reasons why not to do it inside of your head.
Who do they say they are?
They're evolved individuals, just exactly like we are now, except they've evolved down what is called, this, in terms we deal with, the cylinder of evolutionary absolute time, which is just states of evolution that go on after we evolve out of this state. We'll evolve onto a higher state and a higher state and far beyond that. And they're assistants on the path of evolution, and that's their whole purpose, is to assist souls through evolution. And they work with lots of people probably here on this planet in different states of evolution, and they assist them along in assisting others to evolve down through evolution. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, they call them doorkeepers or gatekeepers. They're the same thing. And all they are individuals who help others, guides, helping others in evolution.
Did they give you names?
Did they give me their names?
Do they have names?
They do have names. I don't know their names. individual names, but I know they do have names because they seem to, well, let me take that back. They have names in a understanding way rather than a, like I would call you Bob and you would call me Corky. They don't speak with their mouths, they speak with telepathy with each other. They seem to know what's going on. They speak to you in the same manner and they know exactly what's going on with you. And it's not, it's in concepts versus words. Does that make sense at all? Like when you're thinking, all of a sudden the whole concept will come to you. It's like a movie in your mind, except it's not a movie. You don't see it, but you understand it. You have the knowledge of it.
Do you now look to them as loving teachers? Or?
Yeah. I got in, a lot of times I was in a great battle with them. I was in a hate mode for them. You can remember this, I've told you that before, where I didn't want to do it and I wanted to be regular and just go around and do what everybody else was doing rather than waste my whole life going around and telling these people that happened to show up to these lectures these crazy stories that everybody thought they were. And it got to a point where there was nothing else I could do except for do that, or I wasn't at peace with myself.
Now, can you communicate with them at will, or is it just when they choose to come to you?
It's when I have a strong enough desire to, I guess I could communicate with them. But most all the encounters have been on their choosing, not mine.
Do you feel that you leave your body or go into some...
Oh, that's a real good
of
question. No,
consciousness
that's a question that was asked a lot of times, but it's exactly like you are here right now and I'm here right now. And I'd say to you, do you feel like you're having a hallucination or something in your imagination is taking place right now? And what would you have to say to me?
Are you asking me right now?
Yeah, I'm asking you that.
It could be. I'm not sure.
Right, but feel your hands.
Well, they feel real.
They feel real?
Mm-hmm.
And you really sort of know you're here, aren't you?
Yeah, I perceive everything around me to be real right now.
Exactly. And this is what most of your life has been like this, hasn't it, when you've been in a conscious state? And so all you could do is compare it with the rest of your life. And that's the same thing I could say about that, is I could compare it with nothing other than the rest of my life to the extent that it's as real as right here and now, or any other day that I've had in my life. And I usually didn't ever ask them questions. I just listened to what was being presented, I guess you could say, or felt it or understood it as it was being presented. And it really seemed crazy to me at first, to be honest with you. I thought, this is just the exact opposite of what I would be telling people about what this whole thing is all about. It seemed real contradictory to my understanding of what everything was from what I've been taught in the LDS Church.
Then the whole purpose, their whole purpose was working with you to help people evolve.
Right. And to build a pyramid and to make the nectars. Now the purpose of the nectars are to put information inside of the nectars so that people can use that for their evolutionary purpose, for a change to take place inside of them. There's 27 different total nectars which we haven't made all of them yet, but the first one we made was meditation. And that's where we begin to allow people to meditate so they can turn within themselves and there find themselves within. And as long as their attention is in the exterior world, nothing really changes except for they become involved in the things in the exterior world rather than the changes that are necessary to take place within inside, because your body isn't going to go on, just your soul. The body's going to drop dead and be buried in the elements of this planet.
Did I understand you right to say that there are other people that they're working with also that are in our realm?
Yeah, I'm positive there are. I don't know them personally, but right after this it was real interesting how a lot of consciousness came around about pyramids. There weren't many people talking about pyramids at this time, then all of a sudden a big wave of people started talking about pyramids at that time. That same thing happened around the turn of the century, around the 1900s. a lot of people got involved in pyramids and trying to discover what the sciences and stuff were of the Egyptians, or those who built the pyramids. Why there were pyramids in South America and Alaska and Europe and Egypt and Russia. There's pyramids all over the planet. And people just don't, I mean, there's a real weird reason for everybody, all of a sudden, a consciousness or an injection of information was put on this planet at that time to a lot of different people because it popped up in isolated incidences all over.